The Watershed Renewal Program is many, many things. It's trying to accomplish a lot. A lot of the work that's happened so far has been in the actual rivers and in streams within Huu-ay-aht territory.
The Seksa hatchery began in the late 90s. There are two different streams that we enhance, the Seksa Creek and the Pachina River. Our license goal was for the Seksa Creek, rebuild and harvest, and for the Pachina River, it was conservation. Over time, we've seen a good return to both those rivers. Most of that was supported by enhancement.
So we're going to be transporting our cohos into our holding tanks right now. And we got about 7 females and 6 males. And we're going to be holding them here for a couple of weeks till they're ready to spawn.
We are running a really successful salmon monitoring program. This year we were able to count salmon in 8 of our creeks and streams, and we got really good data on that. Ingrained in that is a pretty strong relationship with DFO. They help support our projects and help fund some of our stream projects. People from all sorts of walks. So you see industry, you see governments, you see the sports, recreational fishery people, and they're all sitting at the same table, and they're all trying to find a common goal.
It's definitely given me a bigger understanding and respect for what we do on the land and how it affects the fish.
Rick's glasses are rattling. I learned to drive on this road at a very young age. Yeah, with my father being in the forestry sector, that's what actually got him away from residential school after he ran away. Couldn't go home, lived on the streets. So he lied about his age and got hired on by McMillan Blodell. And he used to say to me, you know, girl, one day you could drive one of those. After a few different careers, including the RCMP and some business management, I got my Class 1 license and got hired on with Island Pacific Logging. And so being hired on, I was driving a highway logging truck, which most of your hauls are second growth. In the year of driving, I learned a lot and got to see it firsthand, rather than just driving along the road like this and seeing the trees gone or being taken down. When you get away from the main roads, you get to see which companies follow the practices and who respect the lands, and there are some companies that are definitely respect the lands more than others. I also got to witness, going into a new cut block and seeing the wildlife, especially the bears or cougars. And you'd see them for maybe a week and a half, and then they'd finally give up and go, okay, I guess this is no longer my home, I gotta move somewhere else. And so for me, the firsthand, actually being a log truck driver and driving in this area, it did open my eyes up. Some people may say to me, well, how can you say you respect the lands or, you speak against logging? And well, if anyone can speak against it or have an opinion, I think I have a good right to have an opinion, considering that I did do the work. And now working on the other end of things, you might say, in terms of working to repair the damage, I feel like I do have a bigger understanding of the direct effects from logging.
So now we're in Rousseau Creek, and this is the start of tributary F. This structure is one of the 70 plus structures that we placed. You can see the large logs.
with the boulders and the cables that help secure the structure. And so you can see with the high water levels that have come along and placed further debris on top of the structure, just goes to show how high some of this creek can actually get. Yeah, and then we've got a long support structure that goes up into the back there that possibly may be anchored to another tree. If you have a look, you can see that there's some deep pools that have been created underneath. So when the water does pick up and come through, it'll pick up that gravel, and so you get a scour pool, and it'll take it out, so then you actually end up with a deeper pool underneath the structure, which gives the hiding places for the fish and the shade and the protection that they need. As you can see in here, we got the creek coming through the stands of trees. So guaranteed that's why that tree went down there, nice big old growth. Once the water gets into the root system, over it goes, there's nothing to hold it there. But you can see lots of new trees down from the last time that I've been through here. So this was one of our areas that we had quite a few structures, with a very large structure along here that included use of this large log here that was positioned to stabilize this bank. So this was actually up rock and debris below it. You can see the power of the river coming down has eroded underneath the log, and now it's rolled into the river. Maybe in a better position now actually to protect the bank. The power of the water coming down here, and the height of the water, which is from the flash floods. And that comes in the heavy rain events, and just a lot of water volume is put into the creek or the river at one time, and it does a lot of damage and goes to lots of places it's not supposed to. There was a week where we were working the rotary screw trap, monitoring the outmigration, and we're looking up into the mountainside, and there's a heli crane heli-logging old growth, and within the watershed that we're working in. And this watershed they've been trying to rehabilitate for 20, 30 years now, and it's still very affected by the logging that's happened in the past, and watching that, it's like it's going to continuously be affected, especially within our watersheds. Even the rotary screw trap, the location that we were at, we used to call it Deep Hole, and back in the 80s that was our swim spot, and the river came down nicely and meandered, had its little curves and bends, and now it's straight through and meters of boulders and rock that have destroyed the habitat for the fish.
Huu-ay-aht has taken some big strides to first outline what needs to be done to bring the ecosystem back to a fully functional state, and has embarked on many projects to try to make that happen. And there are some pieces of that are going to take many years to fix or to repair, and other pieces that have been in progress over the last few years. There are many ties between what we're doing in the Watershed Renewal Program and what our forestry company is doing to responsibly plan forestry operations within the territory. There are several components of the Watershed Renewal Program that are collecting data that's required to make good decisions on Huu-ay-aht lands. Some of the things that are happening within Watershed Renewal to support forestry planning are wildlife habitat mapping, so we understand what habitats are being used by listed species like northern goshawk and marbled murrelets. We're also working hard to understand what's needed by deer and elk and other animals within the hāhuułi, as well as looking at where wind throw needs to be considered to ensure that we don't have trees blowing down that we've left up. So this is one of our wildlife cameras that we've set up in a mature forest, collecting data and figuring out or showing us what wildlife are using this area. Then in a relatively short amount of time, someone like Crystal can go through all of those photos and start putting together the picture of what's happening broadly across the whole Huu-ay-aht landscape based on what the cameras are picking up. So one of the things that is really important to consider with Huu-ay-aht's Watershed Renewal Program, whose responsibility it really is to be funding this work. And to use a metaphor, if you've ever had the experience of lending something to somebody and having it come back broken, and you know how you feel when that happens, I can see kind of a likeness within the Watershed Renewal Program, where for quite some time Huu-ay-aht's lands were borrowed by other parties, and then luckily through the modern treaty process they've been returned back where they rightfully need to be with the nation, but the state that they've come back in is really not okay. And so Huu-ay-aht has taken on the responsibility of trying to heal the lands and make sure that the rivers are flowing with as many fish as they can, and that the forests are productive in all kinds of ways, but that's really not okay in modern day for the nation to be holding the bag on all of that work. So in this age of reconciliation in BC and Canada, and in the age of the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, it really is important for Canada and BC to be considering what role they need to be playing in doing this kind of work within Huu-ay-aht's territory. There has been support for some of the work that Huu-ay-aht's been doing in the last few years. Canada's Coastal Restoration Fund did support the work that happened to breach the Sarita Causeway and to repair the estuary within the Sarita area. And that funding was very much appreciated and really valuable to the ecosystem. For the fisheries passage signage work, we're really grateful for funding from the Pacific Salmon Foundation and their community salmon program. We have received a grant from the Pacific Salmon Foundation. We also received cash and in-kind donations from Western Forest Products through our TFL 44 limited partnership that will go a long way to supporting the project.
The past couple of decades, Huu-ay-aht has developed strong relationships with the forest industry. I think it started at the idea of being, business partners. And it's evolved to a place now where that relationship is successful and has posed opportunities for Huu-ay-aht now to further participate in the forest industry. And now we have this opportunity of being able to be decision makers and be at the front lines, providing opportunities for our citizens not only to be in the forest industry, but to participate in the industry so that their concerns are being looked over by our own citizens.
Yeah, my coworker Rick Nookamus, last year's People's Assembly, the forestry department had come forward with a request or a motion to cut a 200,000 cubic meter cut block, or they're allowable for the year. And they were proposing a $2 a cubic meter fund that would go towards watershed restoration. And so in that meeting, my coworker stood up and spoke about his view on that and requested that it go from $2 a cubic meter to $5 a cubic meter.
The reason why I upped the cubic meter is because the dollar wasn't paying its weight for the damage that was done to the rivers and creeks from the logging. It benefited us to do more of this work in our rivers, creeks, and streams.
Very kind of fitting to, one of our elders talking about what you take, you have to put back in. That $5 contribution is that. It's that idea that we understand that if we're going to take resources from our land, or if we're going to take resources from our water, we need to put back into that so that we maintain a balance within that environment of our land, our water, our people. And so the $5 can go in a number of ways, whether it goes back to our land, or it goes back to our water, or it goes back to salmon restoration. All those are all part of the equation of maintaining balance in our environment and keeping it in a state so that those resources can be accessed 7 generations down the road.
When you look at our core principles, hāhuułi, fisheries and forestry, they're connected. You can't manage them in isolation of one another. So when we do our forestry management, we have to take fishery values into consideration. And even, we need to use the word must. We must take it into consideration. If we don't do that, we're not living up to our core values. And the other thing is that one of our core values is Huu-ay-aht, take care. And this is what we're attempting to do. We're attempting to take care of our streams. We're attempting to make sure that our salmon streams are protected from forestry development. We want to ensure that the fishery is there for future generations. That's what this is all about. So the sustainability of our old growth is vitally important to our citizens, and it's something we can't ignore.
The last People's Assembly, and before that with community rounds, there's been a lot of discussion about wood waste. And so a lot of citizens brought up the concern about us burning piles. This is the wood that wasn't taken to a sawmill or to a paper mill. It was wood that was left in the forest, and normally what we do is we either distribute it back into the forest to decay, and some of that we still do, but others gets piled and then has to get somehow removed. And then the cheapest way, and the way it's been done, has been burning. Other wood products would be if there's some short pieces here that we can mill some clear wood out of, whether it could be used for carving or whether it could be used for kind of assembling a tabletop, that kind of thing. So we will put those kind of pieces aside, and then we will take them to another smaller sawmill and get them to mill them for us. But we believe that there is a firewood business that Huu-ay-aht government and group of businesses looking at that could be far beyond just providing firewood for Huu-ay-aht citizens and family members. So what I'm doing now is I will be sorting through it and starting to get on with the further manufacturing of it into firewood and see what else we get. But we're not going to burn it. So this is a move to start to deal with what's left after logging and what else can we do with it.
So when the opportunity came forward to partake in working the land and doing all the baseline studies, for me that was my opportunity to come home, my opportunity to be on the land and learn about our oceans and our rivers and the wildlife and our lands. And it was work that I was paid for, which most days I couldn't believe I was being paid for it because it was so amazing. And in this year and a half, I've learned so much in regards to our lands and the animals and the fish and the wild, just all of it, which I didn't have a background in before. But I love being out. Usually that's my stress reducer, is go hike, go run, go walk, get out into the forest. So now that's where I work, which is pretty amazing.
Yeah, we got 9 Huu-ay-aht members going to North Island College in Port Alberni there. Yeah, that's pretty good to see too, and I'm very surprised my daughter is involved in that there, Belinda Nookmas. Yeah, I'm proud of her actually, that she's doing that.
I'm a single mom. I don't have a lot of time on my hands, but I've always had an interest in forestry, and I was a bit hesitant. I wasn't sure if I could do this course, especially on my own, but it's totally doable. In my family, there's been a lot of people in the forest industry, and a lot of women in the forest industry. Like, I found out that my grandmother, Eb Johnson, and Maxine Nookmas used to be fallers, which is pretty badass, considering, it was like the 70s and there were ladies who were falling trees. I am about a month away from graduating this course. We all come from different backgrounds. Some just took the course just to see what it was like, and some of us have already been in the forest industry or are looking to get into it.
take the risk. It's like if we were cautious and somebody said, Huu-ay-aht, you're going to fail, we wouldn't be where we are today. If we took the advice of some people that said, oh, you're going to fail, you're not going to make it, we wouldn't be here today.
So now we're in a place where we're no longer on the outside looking in, but we're a part of the industry. We're at the front line. We're making sure that those deals we struck and those principles that we're guided by are actually being implemented and guided by not only by us, but by all our partners and forest companies that are working within our area.